All right, so the first thing we're going to do with the pump is knock out the old worn out stator bushing. These are one of those critical bushings that need to be replaced if they're worn out, simply because if they're, this is what we call sealing bushing, and if they're worn, they're not going to seal properly, and you're going to have fluid blow by in the converter clutch circuit. So it's best to replace them, and this one is fairly worn out. So unfortunately, the only way to really get at this is to pound it out. Now you'll notice that this has a bevel to it, and the new bushing also has a beveled side. So one side's beveled, one side is not, or it's much less so. So you want to make sure you install them, the right side up or right orientation, this facing upward or facing you. So what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to attempt to get in behind this. There's like a little tiny lip that I might be able to get at and kind of collapse it toward the center. Switch up my tool. So what this tool is called, it's called a bushing cutter. These are like 15 bucks online. You can buy them on eBay. I think that's where I got this one. It's pretty handy. It'll make fairly quick work of stubborn bushings like this one. Alright, I'm gonna see if I can flip it around and attack it now from the other side and punch it out. And there you have it. Just check the surface. In the event when you, if you're taking out a bushing, on anything, a stator, gear, whatever, drum, and you mar the surface a little bit, it's not the end of the world. What I typically do is, I'll take sandpaper and I will sand it down until it's flat and flush. So the worst thing is if there's some protrusion, and if there's protrusion, then what'll happen is if you try to seat a new bushing in here, that bushing will be protruded and it won't slide over the its location, whether it's a shaft or something else, because it'll bind up on that protrusion. That protrusion will kind of create problems. And if it's real bad and you don't fix it, then you put it back in like that, the bushing may actually spin in place. And, a bushing like this, you'll have a catastrophic leak in this clutch circuit. So, all right, we got it started a little bit, so we're just going to finish seating it. I know the lighting sucks. It's just that time of day. So this bushing is going to basically seat all the way down until it stops. So once it stops, just undo your tension. Check your work. All right, so back to the bench. What we want to do is we want to make sure that the bushing, the bushing installation went as advertised. Make sure it slides onto the input shaft and locates as it should. So go ahead and stack up your forward and directs, and then place the little selective spacer on top, and then just go ahead and seat the stator right on in. It always helps to get the washer out of the way so that the stator can seat, but as you can see, seat's perfect. All right, let's move on to the pump body. Same story here. We have a bushing that we need to replace. We have a seal that needs to be replaced. We put the stator snap rings, or sealing rings, excuse me, on in a little bit. We got our pump gears. And then we got our pump half bolts. All right. So back to the press with the pump body. And we'll go ahead and R&R this bushing. All right, we're back at the press, and we're gonna go ahead and remove the pump body bushing. All right. You want to seat this bushing just a hair below flush. So we'll check it. Yeah, I think that's good. All right, we'll go ahead and stake the bushings now. I like to use kind of a rounded chisel for this purpose. Makes it easier. That should fly. All right. All right. Feels good, looks good. So I think we're ready to move on to assembly of the pump. Let's finish putting the pump together. We have a new set of pump gears. To the left of that's the old set. We have the pump body all prepped with the bushing installed and staked, and the seal also installed and everything lubed up. So you'll also notice that I have different thrust washers, both number 3 and number 1, different thicknesses, and those will be used to dial in our in play. So I'm going to start with installing the original number 1 that came out of the unit. And I also installed, as you saw earlier, the original 85,000 number 3 washer into the forward drum. And then if we need to make adjustments, we'll do so with these other, with these other washers and such. But anyway, new set of pump gears. There's nothing really wrong with the old set, but I always install a new set whenever I do one of these transmissions. And frankly, almost every transmission I do is getting new pump internals. But with these, when you look at the front side and the back side, they're not the same. So the correct orientation is going to be the thick or wide bevel faces down, or in other words, faces the bushing and the seal. So you have the shallower bevel facing you. They're not as obvious on the new gear set as far as which side is which. On the original gear set, there's a more pronounced step here to the bevel. So this is clearly the wider bevel. But you have to eyeball a little bit. But as you can see, there's a step here. And basically this is kind of like the bevel, so to speak. So I'll go ahead and we'll install these. Again, larger side facing down. And install them dry because we need to take some measurements for clearance, particularly the inner and outer gear, as well as the outer gear to the pump body and inner gear to the pump body. And we want to use a straight edge along with a set of feeler gauges to do that. So the book specifications for these measurements are basically outer gear to what they call the pump body face, 4 thousandths to, or excuse me, 4 10,000ths to 2.5 thousandths. Okay, that's 4 10,000ths to 2.5 thousandths. Okay, and same with the inner gear. And then as far as the inner gear teeth, inner gear tooth to the outer gear tooth, which is this gap right here. Let me zoom in a little bit. So basically, this gap right here in between the inner gear and the outer gear is what they're asking you to measure. And the spec on that is going to be basically 2 thousandths to 7.5 thousandths. And that's from the Automatic Transmission Service Group Manual for this transmission. Alright, sorry about the crappy camera angles. Should be a little bit better. Let me kind of move this stuff up a little bit as well. You can see what's going on. Alright, so I don't have a straight edge that fits, straight across the entire span, so I'm just going to use this one and then measure both sides. And basically what we're looking for here is the ability to fit a feeler gauge. Not here. We know that this is going to be our, kind of our control surface, but through here. And the thinnest feeler gauge I have is 5 thousandths. And 5 thousandths isn't fitting, but it is rotating without any drag whatsoever. So if you're in my predicament, essentially what this means is that this will spin and will function fine. So same deal, outer gear, inner gear. Now we want to measure the clearance between the outer and inner gear. Kind of same deal. 5 thousandths fits. Let's measure, or let's try to squeeze an 8 thousandths feeler gauge in there. And it's not going to fit. So this is within specification. So these gears are good. All right, so to begin, lube up the pocket. Get plenty of lube in there. And then again, just double check, make sure you have your orientation correct. We'll put that side down. We'll test it on the converter. If it doesn't seat correctly, then we'll just pull back apart and reverse the situation. All right, we got our stator. Let's lube up that bushing. And we'll lube up the working surface. And we'll slide it into place. So how you want to orient this is this flat spot here with the X is more or less lined up perfectly with this bolt hole next to or to the right of these two square cutout ports or rectangular ports. These are 1/2-inch bolts and they get 15 pounds of torque. And when you torque these, kind of want to go in a crisscross pattern. And then just go around and check them. We'll first install our original #1 washer. It's 120 thou. And then the sealing rings. Flip it over. Note the groove for the converter clutch sealing ring that just goes on. And then lastly your pump O-ring. All right, let's go to the converter. All right, seems to spin nice and smooth. Pump's all done.